there comes a moment in life when words reveal more than actions ever could. Words have a quiet way of revealing what actions sometimes try to hide. A person may show affection in moments, may offer attention when it is convenient, but the truth of their character is often carried in the small, repeated things they say. Not the grand statements, not the dramatic promises, but the subtle patterns that slowly shape how you feel about yourself. If you listen closely, you begin to notice that certain words do not bring comfort or clarity. Instead, they create doubt. They leave you wondering, questioning, and searching for meaning behind what should have been simple. At first, it may not be obvious. You might dismiss it as a bad day, a misunderstanding, or something you are overthinking. But when the same tone, the same kind of words return again and again, they begin to form a pattern. And patterns are never accidental. They reflect a mindset, a way of seeing you, and a way of valuing or not valuing your presence. When someone repeatedly says things that make you feel less than you are, it is not just communication. It is a reflection of how they hold you in their mind. There is a subtle difference between honesty and harm. Honest words may sometimes be uncomfortable, but they are clear, respectful, and rooted in growth. Harmful words, on the other hand, carry confusion. They may sound indirect, dismissive, or even disguised as jokes, but they leave a weight behind. You may find yourself replaying conversations, trying to understand what was really meant, trying to justify why it affected you. In doing so, you slowly begin to shift your focus away from your own clarity and toward their inconsistency. Over time, this creates an imbalance. You begin to adjust yourself, to respond more carefully, to think twice before speaking, not because you are growing, but because you are adapting to avoid discomfort. And this is where the truth becomes clear. Words that consistently make you shrink are not accidental. They are signals. They show you that the space you are in is not aligned with your worth. A person who respects you does not leave you in a constant state of doubt. Their words do not make you question your value or your place in their life. Even in disagreement, there is a sense of stability. There is no need to decode hidden meanings or search for reassurance after every conversation. But when the opposite happens, when words create tension instead of understanding, it is important to recognize what is being shown to you. Listening is not only about hearing what is said, but also about observing how it makes you feel over time. Feelings are not random, they are responses to patterns. And when certain words consistently lead to the same internal discomfort, it becomes clear that they are not isolated moments, but part of a deeper truth being revealed. Silence is often misunderstood. Many people see it as weakness, as an inability to respond, or as something that reflects fear. But true silence is none of these things. It is a conscious decision, a form of control that comes from awareness rather than avoidance. When emotions rise, when words are thrown in ways that provoke, the natural reaction is to respond immediately, to defend, to explain, or to prove a point. Yet, in that moment, reacting often gives away your power. To choose silence requires strength because it goes against this instinct. It asks you to pause when everything inside you wants to speak. It asks you to observe rather than engage, to remain steady while the situation around you may feel unbalanced. This is not about suppressing your voice. It is about understanding when your voice will not be valued or heard in the way it deserves. Not every conversation is an exchange of understanding. Some are simply cycles of repetition, where no matter what you say, the outcome remains the same. In these moments, silence becomes a form of clarity. It allows you to step back and see the situation without being pulled deeper into it. When you are constantly reacting, you are inside the emotion, unable to see the full picture. But when you become still, even briefly, you create space. And in that space, awareness grows. You begin to recognize patterns, intentions, and the direction things are moving toward without the noise of constant back and forth. There is also a quiet dignity in silence. When someone expects a reaction, especially an emotional one, choosing not to give it shifts the entire dynamic. It shows that your inner state is not easily shaken, that your sense of self does not depend on proving in that moment. This does not mean you accept disrespect. It means you refuse to engage with it on a level that drains you. You protect your energy by not feeding into what diminishes it. Silence also reflects emotional maturity. It shows that you understand the difference between what needs to be addressed and what needs to be released. Some words are not meant to be answered because they do not come from a place of understanding. Engaging with them only creates more confusion, more tension, and more distance from your own center. By remaining silent, you allow those words to pass without taking root within you. Over time, this practice strengthens your connection with yourself. You become less dependent on external validation, less reactive to external triggers. You begin to trust that not every situation requires your input, that sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Silence, in this way, is not emptiness. It is presence. It is the ability to remain grounded while everything else moves, to stay aligned with your own sense of peace rather than being pulled into unnecessary conflict. Knowing your worth is not a thought you repeat to yourself once and then forget. It is something that is tested in the way you respond to people, in the situations you allow yourself to stay in, and in the words you accept without resistance. At a deeper level, self-worth is not just about confidence. It is about recognition. Recognition of what you deserve in how you are spoken to, how you are treated, and how your presence is acknowledged by others. There are moments in life where someone's words slowly begin to reshape how you see yourself. Not because those words are true, but because they are repeated in a way that creates emotional weight. When a person consistently makes you explain yourself, defend your intentions, or question your value, something subtle starts to happen inside. You begin to adjust your behavior, not out of growth, but out of the need to avoid discomfort. This adjustment is where self-worth starts to blur. A person who truly understands their worth does not remain in situations where they constantly feel reduced. They may listen, they may try to understand, but they do not lose themselves in the process of being understood by someone else. Because the moment you start over-explaining your value to someone who does not see it, you are already moving away from your own clarity. Your worth does not increase or decrease based on someone else's ability to recognize it. Self-worth also reflects in how quickly you normalize disrespect. Sometimes it does not come as direct insult. It comes in softer forms. Being ignored repeatedly, being spoken to with a tone that lacks respect, being made to feel like your emotions are excessive or unnecessary. If these things are accepted over time without reflection, they slowly become part of what you consider normal. And once something becomes normal, it becomes harder to question. But awareness begins when you start noticing how you feel after interactions, not just during them. Do you feel expanded or diminished? Do you feel clear or confused? Do you feel respected or overlooked? These internal signals are often more truthful than the words themselves, because your emotional state is responding to patterns, not isolated moments. And those patterns reveal how your worth is being acknowledged in that space. Knowing your worth means understanding that your value is not something that needs constant proof. It is not something that becomes real only when someone else agrees with it. It exists independently of how you are treated, even though how you are treated can either honor it or ignore it. The challenge is not in having worth, but in refusing to forget it when external voices try to reshape your perception of it. There is a quiet shift that happens when you begin to hold this awareness steadily. You stop negotiating your value in conversations where it is being questioned. You stop trying to earn basic respect through explanation. You start to recognize that your presence does not need justification. And in that recognition, your decisions begin to change, not out of emotion, but out of alignment with something deeper within you. Protecting your energy is not about avoiding life or shutting yourself away from people. It is about becoming aware of what drains you and what strengthens you. Every interaction you have carries a certain weight. Some interactions leave you feeling clear, steady, and grounded, while others leave you mentally tired, emotionally scattered, or internally heavy. The difference is not always obvious in the moment, but it becomes clear when you start paying attention to your inner state after each experience. There are situations where arguments feel almost automatic. Someone says something, you feel misunderstood, and before you even pause, you respond. You try to correct them, to explain yourself, to make them see your perspective. But not every misunderstanding is meant to be solved through immediate reaction. Some conversations are not searching for truth, they are fueled by emotion, ego, or habit. When you step into those exchanges without awareness, you often find yourself giving more energy than you intended, while receiving nothing in return. That brings clarity. Protecting your energy means recognizing that your attention is valuable. Every time you engage in a reaction that leads nowhere, you are spending that attention without purpose. And over time, this creates a quiet exhaustion. Not the kind that comes from physical work, but the kind that builds from repeated emotional involvement in situations that do not contribute to your peace. You may not notice it immediately, but your mind begins to feel crowded. Your thoughts become heavier, and your patience slowly decreases. There is also a subtle form of self-protection that comes from not responding to everything you are triggered by. A trigger is not always a sign that action is needed. Sometimes it is a sign that awareness is needed. When you feel pulled into an argument, it helps to pause and observe whether responding will actually bring resolution or simply continue a cycle. Many conflicts grow not because they are meaningful, but because both sides keep feeding them with reaction. Without reaction, many of them lose their strength. Protecting your energy also involves understanding emotional boundaries. Not every opinion directed at you requires acceptance, and not every statement deserves engagement. Some words are spoken from frustration, misunderstanding, or projection. If you absorb everything without filtering, you carry more than what belongs to you. And over time, carrying what is not yours becomes a burden that affects your inner balance. When you begin to value your energy, your standards for participation change. You become more selective with your responses. You stop entering discussions that are clearly going in circles. You recognize when a conversation is not moving toward understanding, but toward repetition. This recognition does not come from avoidance, but from awareness of where your presence is actually needed and where it is not. There is a calm strength in choosing not to engage unnecessarily. It allows your mind to remain clearer, your emotions more stable, and your focus more intact. Instead of scattering your attention across every situation that demands it, you begin to direct it toward what truly matters. This shift changes not only how you respond to others, but also how you experience yourself internally. Walking away is often misunderstood as loss, but in reality, it is one of the clearest expressions of inner strength. It is not about running from a situation or avoiding discomfort. It is about recognizing when remaining somewhere no longer aligns with your peace, your clarity, or your sense of self. There comes a point where staying becomes more damaging than leaving, not because of one single moment, but because of everything that has accumulated over time. When you walk away with anger, the action is still tied to the situation. It means the emotional connection is still active, still controlling your response. But walking away with calm understanding is different. It means you have seen enough to no longer need further explanation. You are no longer trying to change the outcome or force clarity where it does not naturally exist. Instead, you are accepting what has already been revealed through patterns, through behavior, through experience. This kind of walking away is not impulsive. It is not driven by emotion in the moment. It is the result of observation. You have seen how certain words make you feel. You have noticed how certain interactions leave you drained. You have recognized when your presence is no longer met with respect or understanding. And slowly, without dramatic decisions, a realization forms inside you that continuing in the same direction will only lead to the same internal imbalance. Letting go calmly requires restraint. It is easier to react, to argue, to express everything that has been held inside. But reacting often keeps you tied to the situation longer than necessary. Calm departure, on the other hand, creates closure within yourself rather than depending on external validation. It does not require the other person to understand or agree. It only requires your own clarity to be strong enough to act upon. There is also a quiet dignity in not needing to announce your departure with intensity. You do not need to prove that you are hurt or justify why you are leaving. The decision itself is enough. When your mind becomes clear, explanations become unnecessary. The silence of your action carries more meaning than any words spoken in frustration. Walking away also reflects self-respect. It shows that you are no longer willing to remain in situations where your emotional well-being is consistently overlooked. It is a boundary, not against people alone, but against experiences that diminish your internal stability. And boundaries, when set calmly, are not meant to punish others. They are meant to preserve your own balance. There is a transformation that happens when you begin to leave situations without emotional disturbance. You start to understand that not every chapter needs to end loudly. Some endings are quiet, almost invisible to others, but deeply significant within you. You stop waiting for perfect closure because you realize that clarity does not always come from conversations. It often comes from awareness that has already formed over time. In that stillness, walking away becomes less about departure and more about alignment. It becomes a natural step when something no longer resonates with the state of peace you are choosing to maintain. And in that alignment, you begin to understand something deeper. That peace was never something you had to chase in others. It was something you had to stop abandoning in yourself. Not every story is meant to be completed in noise. Not every connection is meant to be fixed through effort. And not every door is meant to stay open just because you once walked through it with hope. There is a quiet wisdom in knowing when enough has been seen, when enough has been felt, when enough has already spoken without words. At that point, you no longer need validation for your decision. You no longer need agreement for your clarity. You simply stand in what you know and let everything else fall where it may, because real strength is not in holding on longer than necessary. Real strength is in recognizing when holding on is no longer respect for them or for yourself. And so you move differently now, not rushed, not disturbed, not searching, but aware, steady, clear. And in that clarity, you are no longer lost in what people say, but grounded in what you finally choose to no longer accept.